Hello, friends. My name's Joseph Kemper, and I'm here demonstrating my Kotlin Console app that is meant to be a task manager. It's kind of simple right now, but it works. And so just to show its functionality, I pull up, gives a welcome. I probably should capitalize that, and then gives a menu. We enter the option we want to do, add task. It gives a quick little explanation of what to expect. And then, so this is just sample. And this is a sample. Then it wants the date, and I'll just go ahead and enter that as my date. And from there, we go from there. I then list my tasks, and it gives status of the current task. Task 1 gives the title, gives the description, the start date that I want to get fixed to just have the date. I just ran out of time on it. And same with the due date. And then it gives me how many days I have remaining. As you gathered, I pull the start date and time from the computer, and then that is the due date for when it's due. But that's a whole nother story. I just want to get rid of the time function. As I was working on it, because this version worked perfectly, but when I started trying to format those, it started playing the bug whack-a-mole game, and things kept just popping up. So that is what ended up happening there. From here, I can also load up either additional tasks or load up and overwrite any unsaved tasks. I'm going to show the additional tasks, and then my tasks. And now I list my file, and it gives me my sample, my first one that I created, my tasks that I went and created, test, test two, all those others. And then from there to exit out, I hit 7. So to walk you through my code, these are the libraries I imported to get everything done. I imagine there's room to improve this and optimize it. This is just what I ended up doing for my first run through a full-fledged Kotlin app. From there, these are variables that I use in multiple places. The user input pretty much is used almost anytime I grab user input, and then that I want in a string format at least. And then this is where I store my tasks at. This is the data class that I created to store my tasks in with the different types. The serializable makes it work better for saving and loading of files. That's also why when you save, you do not enter in the file extension. It adds on a specific extension that is needed for Kotlin to properly save. and gives you the introduction, and then calls the main menu. I deliberately chose this structure because the main menu is really where everything runs from, and I didn't want the introduction to show up everywhere and anywhere I went. Anytime I reloaded things, gives you your options, and then uses the when option, which looks it just looks in user input and says, okay, if the string 1 is entered, it runs the add task, 2 delete task, 3 list tasks, and so on and so forth. 7 doesn't have a function. That's when it exits out, it prints that, and as long as the user input is not 7, it recalls menu again. With my functions, this is the initial description that instructions I gave them. Ask them for the title of the task, saves it under task title, asks them for the description, saves it under task description, collects the current date from the computer, and then gets the target date from them and formats that into the desired format. It just collects the time as well, which is a little annoying. And then from there, this creates the new task and adds it into here for a new instance of my task data and adds it to my task list. From there, the deleting is really kind of simple, but also a little bit more in depth. I used a bit of very basic error checking. I started off by making sure that it was a value that could be turned into an integer. So if they entered a letter, then that can't be turned into an integer. And from there, I just checked as long as it's not equal to null and within the length of the scope of the task list size, then it can proceed forward, at which point in time, because the tasks are listed starting at 1, they enter the number 1, subtract 1 to get to index 0, so on and so forth. And then we just remove it out using the index and give them a confirmation, and from there remove it. And this is just saying, hey, if they enter invalid entry, lets them know. I do need to put some proper error checking in here, but that will have to come later. And then this is for listing tasks, and it goes and it just says, all right, just simple for loop for task and task list. Starts off with the task number, which starts at 1, pulls out the task title, task description, task start date, and it can do this simply because it's pulling from the data class that everything is stored in, and then confirms the local date, collects the date, the due date, and converts that to a usable time, and then pulls the time, calculates the days between the due date and the current date, and prints the days remaining till it's due, and then from there increments up the task number by 1, starting it over and going from there. The save tasks does actually have error checking in it. We first get the file name from the user. Then we go and add on the file extension. This file, the SER, is what's works really well for Java and Kotlin native libraries, and works well for the saving method that I ended up using. From there, this prepares the actual class data to be saved, and then this writes the file to writes everything over to the file, or writes the whole object over to the saved object and gets it all prepped out. And this closes the file to allow it to be used and goes from there. I have a little bit more homework I need to do on this area, because while I got it working, I did use a bit of a tutorial on there. I used a lot of resources from this. I was building something I'd never done in a or language I'd never done. So it was fun to do. And I'm happy that I got it working despite how new it was for me. It's something that I can definitely apply to future businesses. From there, I have my confirmation that it was saved, and this goes and basically just looks to see, is this any kind of input error, output exception, catches it and complains if you do it wrong. And then from there goes and returns to the menu, or at least that's what it's supposed to do. And then for loading tasks, this is the file that says, hey, we're going to load new tasks up. Simply clears out the task list and then calls this guy. And so this one first gets the file name from the user, tries out the same kind of thing, loads the data in as a mutable object, and closes out the file, and then loads all of the data into the task list. That way you can combine in your previously created data with your new tasks. And again, a confirmation. And from there, error checking to stop any kind of bugs. And that is my task manager app. Future plans: one, I want to get the date and the dates formatted correctly. I also plan to add on a option to find the task due the earliest and soonest. I will need to add in the ability to tell if a task is overdue, because right now it'll just show like negative date is what that'll end up doing. And my next project, I'm going to be building a basic health and fitness app on to my for a Kotlin basic health and fitness app. And I look forward to sharing that with everyone. And thank you for hanging around.